This video is about getting started in SPSS on graph making. The three most commonly used types of graphs are bar graphs, pie graphs, and line graphs. Line graphs are useful primarily for looking at change over time or looking at relationships between continuous variables. For example, a line graph would be great to show you the relationship between height and weight, since as height goes up, weight also goes up. Bar graphs are probably the most commonly used type of graph in public health and social work. Bar graphs are useful for comparing frequencies between groups, percentages, and means across different categories. Pie graphs are useful for examining parts of a whole. So if you have a whole group of something and you want to see how many different parts it has, that's pretty good. Boop, boop, boop. So I wanted to give you one quick cautionary note. Pie graphs are rarely useful for a good display of data since it's really difficult to compare two pie piece sizes. So if you have a pie chart and something, one of the categories in it is represented by 33% of the pie, and another piece is representing 30% of the pie. Looking at those two pie slices, it's hard to tell which one's larger. It's easier if you put the same data in a bar graph and you can tell which bar is taller. So let's take a look at a couple of these different types of graphs in SPSS. So here's our local health department data. Let's look at the population categories, and we can do a bar graph and a line graph just to show the difference. So under graphs, you go to Chart Builder, and this brings up a new couple little windows here. You're going to do most of your work in the Chart Builder window. It says Chart Builder right at the top. And in the bottom left-hand corner is a list of the different types of graphs that you can choose from. So we're going to try a bar graph, and then we will maybe try a pie graph as well. So this bar graph is for one variable, which is what we're going to do. If you have more than one variable, you might use one of these other types of bar graphs, and I would recommend just playing around to see how they work. And we can use this bar graph to look at the population in categories variable. So there we go. We have population in categories, and see it's showing you different categories. Notice on this last one it says more. This is not an actual representation of the bar graph that you're going to see when you hit OK or paste and run the syntax. This is just a little graphic they put to show you what sort of graph you're going to get. You should not take these bars as a good representation of your data. Over here on the y-axis, see it says count. Maybe you don't want a count of the number of health departments in each category. Maybe instead you want a percentage of the health departments that are in each category. So that's when this second window comes in, this element properties window comes in. If you go under the statistics box in the middle, you can look at the different statistics available. So you could do mean, you could do median, you could do mode. We could try percentage. In this case, it doesn't give us an option for percentage. These little parentheses indicate that for some analyses, you might be given the option to choose a percentage in one group or a percentage in another group. In this case, we'll just choose percentage. And then if we hit apply, this changes now to percentage. So now we're going to have the percentage of health departments that are in each of these population categories. I'm going to paste that, and it's going to give you a giant mess. So I would highly recommend annotating. Percent. Okay. Again, you don't need this data set activate unless you have multiple data sets open, and even then it's not that useful. So I would delete that just to clean up your syntax, highlight, and run. So here's what you get when you run that particular dialog. a particular syntax. This looks pretty good. Notice that the percent, the y-axis only goes up a little above 40%. So if you're hoping to have 100% or you want a higher number, you're going to have to fix that. It's kind of a weird brown color. It's got a little bit of a boring gray background. So there's some things about this chart that you might want to change. So if you want to change it, you can double click on it, and that'll open it in a new little chart editor window. And then you can do pretty much whatever you want. If my study was about very large health departments and I wanted to make sure everybody knew which of these bars corresponds to the percent of very large health departments that we had, I might click on this, on these bars until I highlighted the one that was 500,000. And then I could choose a different color for it. Maybe I want it to be bright blue so that it shows up. Maybe I want these other bars to be another color. So I can do all kinds of stuff like that. The background I think is pretty awful, so I'm going to just change that to no color so that it's white. The text is very, very small. If I click on one of the bits of text, I can go up here and choose larger text. I could choose larger text for the percentage as well. I might be interested in adding a title. So I could add a title at the top that was like a figure title. Figure 1, percent of health departments by population in 2013. Remember, we always want that title to give the viewer an idea of what's in our figure so they don't have to read the text around it. So there's lots of other options you can do. I would recommend just playing with this. I can make this text bigger. I can make this text bigger, and so on. And then once I hit close, it comes in your output window with all the editing that you just did. So then you can right click and copy it and paste it into whatever document you are working on. All right, so that's how you would go ahead and do a bar graph. Let's try a pie chart. If I go under Graphs, Chart Builder, and I go down here and choose pie, it's still got my population categories here, and it's got count over here. So maybe instead of count, I'd like percentage, and I can apply that and hit paste. So this comes up a whole bunch more syntax. I can just go ahead and highlight and run, and you get a nice little pie chart here. So we have 4 categories, and it's pretty easy to tell which is smallest, the purple, and next smallest, the green. But it's pretty hard from this pie chart to tell whether the blue pie piece here is bigger or smaller or the same size as the beige pie piece here. So if I go back up to my bar chart, it's also kind of hard to tell, but if you look closely, it looks like the rural health departments, the very small health departments with fewer than 25,000 people, has a slightly higher bar. There's some other things you could do to this to make that more clear. You could add data labels, and that would show you the actual percents on each bar. So there are a few things you could do to make that more clear in this particular visual. But I guess the point is that it's a little bit easier to see that this bar is taller even without the numbers than it is to see that this pie piece is bigger. The blue pie piece is slightly bigger. Just like with the bar chart, you can double click on this to wake it up, and then you can change colors of things. So if I wanted this pie piece to be light blue and everything else to be more pastel, I could change each of these bars or each of these pie pieces to be a different color. I can make this text larger, which is probably a good idea, and so on. And there are lots of other options that you can take a look at. We could add a title. And then once you're done with that, you can right click on it, copy it, and paste it into whatever document you're working on. Okay, so that's a couple of different types of graphs. You can also use SPSS to make line graphs and area graphs, all different kinds, scatter plots, lots of different things. So I would highly recommend, if you have a little extra time as you're working through the quests and the other things in this particular level, go ahead and just play around with the different options and the different graph types and see what you get. And that way you'll learn what's available and you can choose the best option for whatever you're trying to display in your data.